Okay, so for the final part of this tutorial, we're going to add a form and a dynamic map to our contact page. So over in my HTML, I'm going to start with my content left division, and I'm going to get rid of the placeholder text that says this division is empty. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a map to where, say my business was, or I'm going to put a map to my favourite place or something in there using Google Maps. So if we click over here to Google Maps, this is just the normal Google Maps, www.google.com/maps, and I've found a location on my map that I would like to include on my website. So once I've typed an address, I can type in an actual street address, I can type in a place, I can just search the map and click somewhere on it, and that will add an address. I'm going to go with the Deck Cafe, which is a cafe in Currumbin. And then once that's selected, I get all of these options popping up on my screen. I go to Share, and I can send that link to somebody, or I can embed a map. So it gives you a preview here of what my map is going to look like. It says this map is built for you. It shows me that I have my red location anchor. I've got the date, I can go and visit their reviews, I can get directions, whatever it is. And up here I have my iframe source. I can also change the size of this if I like as well. So I'm going to make mine small because my website is only quite small. And then I'm going to say copy HTML. Done. Now all I need to do is come back to my HTML, to that division, tab in once, considering I'm adding, and since I'm nesting something, and I just choose paste. You can see there that I have this iframe selector, and the source of that iframe is the link that has been provided to us from Google Maps. And secondly, it gives us some attributes here for width, height, frame border, style, and allow full screen. Okay, so we can come in and change those later, but let's preview what this looks like at the moment by pressing save and coming back to our website. So we can see there that I now have this map inside my screen. It's not dynamic, it doesn't move with the rest of my screen, but I can adjust the width and height if I would like to. I'm going to leave it that size for now, but I would like to push it down a little bit, and I would like to center it within my division. So I'm going to do all of that in HTML by adding 2 line breaks before my iframe. And then I'm going to add a center tag. And make sure that I close my center tag after that iframe, because the iframe is nested inside the center tag is nested, content, 2 line breaks, and then I'm going to center my iframe and close that content left division. So we can now see that my iframe or the map will stay centered within that division at all times. If my page does get too small, it's going to squash over the top of the other division. It's not going to resize, but that's okay. If I would like to change that, I can come over here to my iframe and select that 400 pixels and actually just change that to 100%. So I want my width to be 100% of the area that it's inside of. If I save that, I can now see that that will actually stay within inside its division as I stretch my page. So it'll stretch the whole width of the page at all times, which looks good. Okay, so content left is finished. The second thing I'm going to do is on my content right is I'm going to insert a form. So forms are really good ways for people to put through inquiries or send you their details or to sign up for different things. So we need to have a few places where they can actually input their data. So again, I'm going to come here to my content right division. I'm going to delete my placeholder text. And I'm going to insert a form by using the form selector or the form element. inside here, I'm going to place all of the assets that I want my form to have. So I would like it to have an input area. I'm going to give it an attribute of name so I can call this later if I need to. I'm just going to call it fname for first name. And its type equals text. So I want people to be able to type text into that cell. If I save this, we can see that this little text area has now appeared on my favourite side of the page. So it's kind of stuck up in the top corner and it doesn't look great at this stage, but we can adjust these in a minute. I just want to get all of my inputs in. So I'm also going to add an input for my last name. An equal sign helps. And that type will also be text. Now there are many types that you can put here. You could put password, which would hide the font, or hide the type as people. I'll show you what I mean. So now when people type into the box, it hides the words that they're typing. I could put a URL, I could put numbers, which means when I try and use my keyboard to type letters, nothing works. When I type numbers, it does. And I can also use these little arrows to count up and down. So numbers an option. So using the W3 School site, you could look at all sorts of attributes available or values available for the type attribute. But for today, we're going to keep these both as text. The next thing we'd like is to have some sort of drop-down list where the user has to choose an item from the drop-down list. So this is actually called a select list. And its name is going to be country. And we can see that that has expecting us to nest something inside it. So it's expecting us to put some options inside it that we want inside our drop-down or our select menu. I'm going to tab across once and I'm going to choose option, and then inside this area I can say I'm put the word that I want to drop down. So I put country in there, so I make the first country Australia, and I want to name each of these options as well. So if I do want to refer to them later, they have a little name, so it's good practice. I'm going to call that one Oz. I'm going to copy that. Paste it underneath. So the second one I'm going to call NZ, and I'm going to make that one, oops, I'm going to make that one New Zealand. Third one I'm going to go VN, and I make that one Vietnam. Okay, so I have a select name is country. And then each option has a name, Oz, NZ, and VN, but the user actually sees the full word for the country, which is displayed like here, like this. So if I save this now, you'll now see that on my site I have a drop-down list where I can choose different options. The last element my form is going to have is a text area. And we can see it's already typed, text area. Its name is going to be inquiry, and between the two tags, so it's expecting some content here, I'm just going to write this is for inquiries. You can see here that I have an inquiry box. You can also see that it's got all of this sort of space at front of it, which is sort of weird. So what actually happens here is the text area counts everything that's in between it. So you can see that enter that I've put in there and that spacing to nest it is actually appearing here in my text area. So I want to make sure that these one element that we make sure that anything between the two items is sort of exactly the way we want to see it. Sort of like the options up here. The thing that's going to display on the website has no extra spaces or enters in it. Okay, so that fixes up text. You can see though that my text box is still quite small. We want to actually set a size for this. So after the attribute for name, I'm going to say rows equal 30. And I'm also going to set columns to 30. Let me see that. That's probably a little bit too high for rows, so let's bring that on back to 10 rows, which is a nice sized sort of inquiry box. Okay, so they're all just based right up at the top of the screen. There's no headings to tell me what to type into any of them. So I'm obviously going to have to add some more to this. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to create an option in here that is going to, or to create some titles, I should say. So first we're going to give our form a heading. So above the form tag, but making sure we're still inside the div content R, I'm going to include a heading 1 called Contact Us. And then before each of my input elements, I'm going to put a paragraph that describes, I guess, what it is that I want the person to insert. So first name would be first. Last name. And when we save that, we can see that my text has appeared above each of my form elements. They do automatically have the CSS from my home page. So my home page had my heading 1 set like this and my paragraph set like this. When I come to my contact, because this CSS is referring to the right hand division, so any division that's called content R, my heading 1 and my paragraph automatically adjust, which is really handy. So I'm quite happy that my Contact Us heading looks like this. I would probably like my first name, last name and country tabs to be left aligned though. So in order to do that, I need to separate them from the other content paragraph. So here I have my previous CSS, so content R paragraph. I changed the font and I aligned it to center. Underneath that, I would like to say I want to now target my content right form paragraphs. So anything that I put in here will only happen to paragraphs that are inside my form tag, and this will only happen to paragraphs that are inside my content R. So if I didn't have this at all, it would default to this, but because this is more specific, it's going to follow this one. So I want my font family to be the same. I want the color to be the same, but I want the alignment to be different. So rather than text align center, I'm going to say text align left. And we can see that those have automatically jumped across to the left. I press save all. And I now have a form in my right hand division, content division, that is left aligned. I can type into it. Okay, so it allows me to type into all boxes, but at this stage I don't have any way of submitting my form. And my form is also quite butted up against the side of the division, and especially considering this map now comes all the way out to the edge, it looks a bit cramped. I've got all this empty space, so I would like to maybe place some padding in this division so that it pushes that text out. And it probably wouldn't hurt to have padding on this first page as well. We can't see it at the moment because this text is centered, but if this was aligned to the left, it'd be right up against our table looking ugly as well. So we'll add some padding to that division, and we will add a submit button to the bottom of this as well. So we'll start with the CSS for padding. So we just want to find our content R division. So looking here in our CSS, I just want this one, hashtag content R. Its width is 40% at the moment. It's floating to the right and it has a background color of white. I just want to add some padding. And I'm going to say 4%. So what we can see has happened is that our content right division has become 8% too large to slot in nice and neatly in next to our content left division. So we need to make sure that our percentages match. We want the two divisions to equal 100% in total. So if this width is now 48%, because 4% on the left and 4% on the right, so it's now 48%, we actually need to bring this one down from 60 to 52%. And we can see now that our map still goes 100%, but we have this 4% of padding sitting around our form so that as we enlarge our page, it becomes nice and neat. We may even decide that now this is sitting too close to here and we may want to put 2% padding onto our left division. Which again now means that this one is too large, so we just need to continue to adjust the size. So this time I'm going to take 4 off this and make this one 36. And so they sit in neatly next to each other and nothing sort of crushed up right against the sides of the division, and they're nicely balanced at all times. We've got 4% on either side of our Contact Us form and we have 2% on either side of our map. There'll always be a nice space and they'll always be centered. So this is working well. Also file, save all. Okay, so now that we have our padding organized, we have our text organized, we're going to add a submit button to the bottom of our form. So coming back to our content R division, we come underneath this text area, and this time we're going to create an input. And its name will be submit, and its type will be submit. And now we have a little button at the bottom of our form that we can click. And when I press the submit button, the form clears. So this is the basis of how we make our Contact Us page. For any websites, we can choose any kind of dynamic map, and we can make a form here that allows people to put in information that they might like to put in. What we would like to do is make sure this little submit button stays underneath this box when we make our page bigger. So we're actually just going to put a line break between our text area and our input button area. That should fix that issue. So no matter how big the page gets, it stops our button from moving around. And we also want to create some sort of validation for this form. So we're going to add some attributes to our form elements that require the user to do certain things. So the first thing that we're going to do is add an on submit attribute. And on submit, we want it to give us an alert that says thank you for your inquiry. So it's important here to notice it's inside the form tag, so it's actually an attribute of the form. It says on submit, we want you to produce an alert, and inside single quotation marks, we write our alert, making sure that's in brackets, and then we close the string, or we close the value at the end of that. When I press save, you'll see now when I press submit, I get an alert that says this page says thank you for your inquiry. It gives feedback to the user so that they know that what they've done has just worked. If the form just cleared itself and there was no validation or no confirmation that anything had happened, they may submit the inquiry a few times, or they may not think that it's worked and attempt to go somewhere else. So we want to make sure that they get some feedback when they press the submit button. Now what we want to happen is that only happens, so they only get that submit alert, and the form actually only goes through if the required fields have been met. So I would like their first name. I would also like their last name. I'm not necessarily concerned whether they choose the correct option for country, but I definitely need an inquiry. So I want these three areas to all be required. So the way that I can do that is to add an attribute to those three input elements. So inside our first name input, I'm going to say required. And I'll do the same for the second. So now we'll find when I type nothing in any of the boxes, it'll say please fill in this field. If I don't type anything else, it asks me for the second one. Okay, so that works. We need to add one to our text area as well. So now when my first and second fields are empty, you would think that when I press submit, it would ask me to put information in the third because I have a required here. It doesn't, it accepts my form. So at the moment, what's happening is that I have already pre-filled this field with this text. It says this is for inquiries. So I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to make sure that there is nothing inside my field here. So now it'll say, please fill in this field. Submit. It is nice to have a placeholder though in here, so we want the user, we want some sort of sentence that says please enter your request below, or make sure you give us your contact details, or some sort of message inside this area that the person can type over the top of. So if we don't want it to be content, or we don't want it to be content in the text area, we want it to be an attribute. So next to required, we can write placeholder equals and when I save that, we can see that that's appeared in that box, but it's grayed out, okay? So it's sort of transparent just in the background, and as soon as I start typing, it disappears. So now it recognizes that my first name field, my last name field is empty. It recognizes that my inquiry is empty. And when all of the required fields are full, it allows me to submit. There are plenty of attributes, as I said, you can add to these form elements, and that includes these forms of validation. So obviously at the moment we don't have any way of contacting the user back, so you might add a You might add some form elements for phone number or email address, and what you would then do is change that. Change this to email. And this one we can change to email. And then required type will also be email. So you can see I have a new field here. And when I go to submit that, it automatically recognizes that this is an incorrect email address. So it doesn't have the symbol @ and now it lets me sort of go ahead with my email address. We could require a telephone number in here as well, where we change the type to number so that they can't type they can't type anything in there that isn't supposed to be there. So this is essentially how we create forms and contact pages with CSS and HTML.